So here's a simple statement that holds a ton of truth. Most people overcomplicate situations because they believe the solution requires it. And I can sympathize with those who do this because I've done it. I remember in my early 20s, I drove a black Pontiac Grand Prix, and I loved that car. I loved it. But it had its fair share of problems, overheating being one of them. And I remember calling my dad, worried that this problem would require a complex and expensive solution, right? In my mind, I'm thinking this is going to take hundreds of dollars to fix. However, I was very wrong. Fixing this issue required a $7 thermostat, tools we already had, and about 10 minutes of our time. My dad taught me a valuable lesson that day. Sometimes the solution to our problems is simpler than we think. And here we are nearly a decade later, and those words still resonate with me. See, there are many situations we face in life where the solution is different than what we expected it to be. And this is because we're programmed to desire novelty, complexity, the perfect solution. And when we're presented with a solution, an outcome that doesn't check all of those boxes, we think something is missing. But why do we do this, right? What is it that drives us to overlook relatively simple solutions to seemingly complex problems in life, at work, and in our relationships? And so today I want to explore this fascinating phenomenon, which is known as the complexity bias, and help you adopt a different perspective. I want to help you experience a mindset shift similar to the one that I had when I was under the hood of my black Pontiac Grand Prix, spending those 10 minutes with my dad, fixing what I thought was a complicated problem with a very simple solution. Now, if you're unsure about what complexity bias is all about, here's the definition. Complexity bias is when we tend to believe that complicated ideas are better and more true than simple ones. So when faced with two competing ideas, we are likely to choose the most complex one, usually the option with the most assumptions. As a result, when we need to solve a problem, we may ignore simple solutions thinking that will never work and instead favor complex ones. After hearing this definition out loud, I know for a fact that this is me. I suffer from complexity bias. But I'm curious if you see bits of yourself in this as well. Is there any part of your behavior that favors complex solutions over simple ones? And if so, you're not alone, right? We all do it. We all attempt to inject complexity into anything we can because our complexity bias subconsciously leads us to believe that the solution should require more knowledge and effort. However, that's just not always true. And so that leads me to an unanswered question. And that question is, well, how do we overcome complexity bias, right? And the most effective tool to do this resembles the lesson that I learned all those years ago when I was under the hood of that black Pontiac Grand Prix and my dad was helping me fix the overheating issue. And the answer is the simplest solution or explanation is usually the correct one. And what this means is that whenever we're faced with a problem, we must avoid making assumptions. And so we have to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just assess the situation. What are the facts? What are the foundational truths? And then once we had that information, then ask ourselves, okay, how much complexity is needed in the solution we seek? And that sounds simple, right? To just say, take a step back, take a deep breath, figure out the facts, don't make assumptions. And it is simple. It's supposed to be simple. Now, I'm not advocating that complexity can always be avoided. Sometimes it can't be. Sometimes it's needed depending on the problem you're trying to solve. However, in most everyday situations, the regular ups and downs that you and I face in life, simple is usually better. And this is true for how we communicate in the workplace. Why add the complexity of setting up a meeting when we can just send an email or a Slack message, a Teams message, and get the same point across? This is also true when it comes to our workout routines. Most of us aren't trying to become bodybuilders or physique models. So why follow an overcomplicated workout routine when a simple one will help us remain healthy, fit, and confident, which is the goal anyway? This is also true when you look at your life routine, things like getting dressed. This is why I'm such a huge fan of minimalism and decluttering and simplifying your life, because as a whole, it moves you further away from this concept of complexity bias and injecting complexity in situations that don't require it, right? I'll give you an example. For me, something that I used to overcomplicate a lot was getting dressed. Believe it or not, I would spend hours in front of my closet just to pick out a t-shirt and some pants, just to make sure it looked good. And if I didn't like it, I didn't feel good in it, then I would spend another hour picking something else out. I did this for years, and it was exhausting both physically and mentally and financially, because I kept spending money on clothes that I wasn't wearing. And so simplifying my wardrobe helped me simplify my routine and then move me away from this concept of injecting complexity into my routine, right? Now, a big proponent of that was my everyday t-shirt. And that brings us to today's sponsor, which is Cuts. Now, Cuts has been my go-to t-shirt for the last 3 years now. And it's because they're high quality, they're comfortable, and like I said, they help me keep my routine simple. I'm not spending hours in my closet wasting time. And so if you're currently decluttering your wardrobe or decluttering your home in general, right, and you're looking to build a simple routine for yourself, and that involves a simple wardrobe for yourself, then I highly encourage you to check out Cuts. They have t-shirts for both men and women. And if you use promo code Ronald20, then you'll save 20% on your purchase, which is a pretty sweet deal. Now, another great example of how complexity bias tries to sway us in our life is when it comes to this idea of people pleasing, right? Trying to please everyone in your life adds a ton of complexity to your life, because now you're juggling different personalities and different expectations, and that's exhausting. So the question I have for you is, instead of trying to become a people pleaser or trying to please everybody, what if you just prioritized your core values? Would that simplify things for you? And I'll give you a hint. The answer is yes. Now, if you don't know your core values, I have a core values worksheet that's completely free. Just go to ronaldlbanks.com/values. You can download a copy there, and I'll walk you through the steps to identify your core values so you can move away from this idea of complexity and people pleasing and all that nonsense and focus on the things that matter to you. And so going forward, I want you to take some time to consider the scenarios in your life where complexity bias might sway you. And of course, everyone's situation is different, and you might require a more complex solution. I'll leave that for you to decide based on your circumstances. But unless we take a step back and ask ourselves questions, we might never know if we're simply overcomplicating it. And so at the beginning of this conversation, right, I shared a lesson that my dad taught me when we were under the hood of that black Pontiac. And I want to remind you of that lesson here again. Sometimes the solution to our problems in life is simpler than we think. And so my advice, my encouragement, my suggestion to you is keep life simple, my friend. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.